former US President Donald Trump holds a significant edge over incumbent President Joe Biden in at least 4 key swing states, according to the latest polling from the New York Times and Siena College. In Nevada, a state which Biden won narrowly in the 2020 presidential election, Trump boasts a 52% to Biden's 41%. That is an 11 percentage lead, which can trounce any opponent in any election. Trump also leads Biden in Georgia, a state that was central to him trying to cast doubts on the results of the 2020 presidential election. In fact, one of the criminal indictments that Trump currently faces is in Georgia, where it is alleged that he pressurized state officials to try to overturn the results. In this state, Trump has 49% to Biden's 43%. Trump also leads Biden in Arizona with 49% to Biden's 44%. In Michigan, another swing state, Trump holds a 5-point lead there as well, 48 to 43%. The latest battleground state polling underscores the considerable challenges facing Joe Biden's re-election bid, top of which are low job approval ratings. His ratings are in the low 30s, somewhere just as bad as what George W. Bush had faced in the later years of the Iraq War. Biden also faces questions about his age, about his mental ability to steer the country amidst all the global challenges that he has on his plate. The poll results are particularly striking for Biden given the mounting legal troubles that former President Donald Trump faces. Trump, in fact, faces multiple legal cases across the country. He's got 90-odd criminal charges. There are 4 indictments. He's, of course, pleaded not guilty to all the charges. And one factor that is contributing to Biden's unpopularity is the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. American presidents have had a tough time going into re-election year with an ongoing war. Richard Nixon found that out the hard way during the Vietnam War in the 1960s. George W. Bush was deeply unpopular during the Iraq War, and although he did manage to win re-election in 2004, one of the biggest reasons why Obama, a rank outsider, won in 2008 was because he was one of the only few Democrat senators at that time who had voted against the war. Biden did botch up the withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, but now he has to preside over not just one, but 2 wars. The latest one in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, and of course the ongoing one between Russia and Ukraine, which many now are calling the Forgotten War. It also has real-world consequences. The Gaza war, for example, has forced the United States to divert both time and resources away from Ukraine. In some cases, there is direct competition for ammunition between Israel and Ukraine. Ukraine has been desperately short of mortar shells. It's also now competing with Israel for scarce supplies. It also requires air defense systems, which are needed by both countries, in fact. The West is already finding it hard to rally global support for Ukraine, and that is now getting further depleted by the widespread anger in the global South about American support for Israel. Countries are now openly asking about America's double standards, comparing its response to both these wars. The Western argument that Russia is committing war crimes in Ukraine is now being met with snide retorts, something like this: what about Israel? What about America's favorite ally and what it's doing in Gaza? Are those not war crimes too? There is growing danger that Russia will gain the initiative in the war with Ukraine over the coming year. In the Middle East, there was some tentative optimism earlier that was fostered by the Abraham peace accords between Israel and some of its Arab neighbors. That is now pretty much dead in the water after the Israeli invasion of Gaza. A wider Middle East war is now looking increasingly likely, something that the United States is desperate to avoid. These developments come at a time when the Ukraine war itself was faltering. The Kiev government's counteroffensive has largely failed. Vladimir Zelensky, Ukraine's president, has angrily dismissed the idea that the war has turned into some kind of a stalemate for Ukraine. He's even blasted one of his top generals for saying so. Russia could use the stalemate to press on the offensive. Russia has turned itself into a war economy. It'll probably have a growing edge both in arms as well as troop numbers going into 2024. Russian forces are likely to hammer Ukrainian cities once again over the coming months. A battered Ukraine remains heavily dependent on the West for both military aid and financial support. But Kiev's Western backers have failed to ramp up their weapons production to match the Russian war machine. Meanwhile, continued funding for Ukraine has got stuck in the US Congress. The mood on Capitol Hill is definitely turning against further opening up the purse for Ukraine. Across the political divide, lawmakers are backing Israel in its war effort in a way that they are loath to doing for Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has even more reason to keep fighting harder over the next year, given the growing prospect that Donald Trump will return to the White House, and once that happens, he's just going to abandon Ukraine to its fate. A Trump victory has become more likely because of the Gaza conflict. Biden needs younger voters, progressive voters, and Arab Americans to turn out in large numbers and vote for him. And these are the exact same people who've been out protesting both on university campuses and outside Capitol Hill. Many of these Democrat or Democrat-leaning voters are furious about the Biden administration's support for Israel. A good number of American Jews who are also Democrats are dead against Netanyahu. Biden now is in the danger of becoming the unintended victim of all the heat that is directed at his friend Bibi. If these liberal and progressive voters stay at home, then this election could tip towards Trump. Biden also faces the prospect which only incumbent Democrat presidents face, and that is he cannot afford to be seen as not fully supportive of Israel, America's closest ally, in an election year. Unlike the Democrats who are divided, the Republicans are solidly rallying behind Israel. Biden will get roasted by the other side, the Republicans, if he is seen as wavering in his support for Israel. The intense global spotlight on Israel and Gaza may also be providing cover for other human rights abuses to take place. In fact, in recent weeks, there have been mass deportations and forced migration that have taken place in Pakistan, Sudan, and Nagorno-Karabakh. With America overstretched abroad and unstable at home, China too may sniff an opportunity here. There are currently some tentative signs of rapprochement between Beijing and Washington. In fact, Biden and Xi Jinping are due to meet later this month in California on the sidelines of the APEC summit. But the big picture remains this, that China is intent on displacing the United States as the dominant power in the world. The main focus of Xi Jinping's ambitions are currently towards Taiwan. In fact, the reading in Washington is that Xi has told his military commanders to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. That's the year China completes 100 years as an independent nation. In an effort to try and deter China, Biden has repeatedly pledged to defend Taiwan. But with America distracted and divided, Xi might see an opportunity to increase pressure on Taiwan over 2024. Now that would add yet another security crisis, this time in East Asia, and it's not as if the world is already not gripped by what's going on in Europe and in the Middle East.